Corruption and its effects can be found everywhere in the world. We all likely have a corruption story to share, be it from the news, a work experience, or from our private lives. Some people think of it as an unavoidable fact of life, culture, or cost of doing business. Others see it as a moral and ethical wrong that must be rooted from our societies. People understand corruption differently. One widely accepted definition of corruption describes it as the abuse of entrusted power for private gain. Entrusted power typically refers to being in a position of relative power, be this, for example, because one has the power to decide over others or because one has access to assets they should protect. This power may be entrusted to us by our employers, by donor agencies, and the populations funding these with their taxes. In this sense, the definition of corruption and entrusted power doesn't only apply to politicians and public servants. The private gain part of corruption can refer to a gain of anything of value: money, presents, goods and services, favors, and so on. Corruption does not need to lead to the direct private gain of the person engaging in it. It could just as well directly benefit the person's friend, family member, or business associate. It can also refer to the private gain of a company or organization, and not necessarily one's own. Corruption can be manifested in many forms, such as fraud, bribery, facilitation payments, favoritism, extortion, and with particularly devastating results, sexual exploitation and abuse. Given this understanding of corruption, the answer to the question of why we should do anti-corruption as humanitarian and development actors may seem obvious. But let's break the reasoning down to make the connection clear. Corruption bears major costs and negative effects in terms of socioeconomic and political development. It undermines rule of law and is a root cause of conflict, as well as fueling ongoing conflicts by further exacerbating power inequalities in society. According to the UN, the overall cost of corruption exceeds by far the damage done by any other single crime. The World Economic Forum estimates the global cost of corruption to be upwards of $4 trillion. Fundamentally, corruption undermines the trust, identity, and social fabric that binds us together, and disproportionately harms the marginalized and vulnerable in the world. Tackling corruption is clearly linked to the core of our mandate as humanitarian and development actors. It may be hard to see the individual and the individual's corrupt actions as part of this bigger picture, but it is exactly the combined corrupt actions of individuals that ultimately form intricate, institutional, and systemic webs of corruption in society. Even attempted corruption is criminalized in many jurisdictions, and criminal penalties can range from fines to prison sentences, forced labor, and even the death penalty. As humanitarian and development actors, we are often positioned on the privileged end of significant power imbalances in the context in which we work. These imbalances relate to deeply rooted inequalities, including gender inequalities, and they create conditions that can easily give rise to misconduct, including corruption, such as in the form of bribery and extortion. Keep your position of relative power in mind when you do your work, and ensure that you never abuse that power, neither for your own gain nor for the gain of another. Corruption undermines the proper and effective conduct of our work, as well as our upwards accountability towards donors and the public, our internal accountability towards our organizations and our colleagues, and most importantly, our downwards accountability towards rights-holding people and communities of concern. There is also the risk element of anti-corruption related to managing financial, reputational, legal, safety, and programmatic risks. The many reasons for humanitarian and development actors to engage in anti-corruption thus become clear. Learn more about anti-corruption in the next video, Anti-Corruption in Practice, where the practical side of anti-corruption is presented.